Welcome to Mpowered Living. I'm Ann Sheu. On this podcast, innovative leaders and visionary experts share insights and practical tools for work, family, and marriage. Each episode, we'll explore how to elevate your life while staying grounded in what truly matters to you. You're working hard to navigate relationships, build a thriving family, and create a legacy of purpose. We're here to help you do that with confidence and intentionality. So if you're ready to live a life by design, you're in the right place. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to Mpowered Living, the podcast where we explore the habits and conversations that help us build more intentional, resilient lives. I'm your host, Ann Sheu, and today we are talking about the importance of mentorship for young women. I'm joined by Dr. Tim Jordan, a developmental and behavioral pediatrician who has spent over 35 years counseling girls, leading camps, and equipping parents all around the world. In this conversation, Dr. Jordan and I talk about why so many girls today feel overwhelmed by pressure and stress, how to reframe parenting around character over achievement, the role of family meetings, rituals, and downtime in building trust, practical ways to listen without fixing, and empower our kids to solve conflicts themselves, and the surprising power of teaching girls how and why to embrace quiet, tech-free moments. Whether you're raising daughters, mentoring young women, or simply interested in fostering resilience in the next generation, this episode is packed with wisdom and practical tools. Let's dive in. Hi, Dr. Tim Jordan. I am so excited to have you here with us today.
Thanks for having me. This is going to be fun.
I know, I can't wait. So let's just dive in. Okay, so I want to start with the summer camp that you've been doing. I know that you just spent a week leading camp for middle school girls, and then next week you've got high school girls. So tell me, what is on their mind? What are they talking about? What's the buzz in middle school girl circles right now?
Well, some of it is just the normal stuff about friends and losing friends and drama and the things we always kind of associate with middle school girls. But there's a lot of stress in families today. And so a lot of the girls, we have circle time all morning. We sit in a circle we had 25 middle school girls, and we create a safe space for them to open up and share and talk about things that they're facing and so these challenges, whatever. And so, there was a lot of them who have issues in their families with stress and pressure on everybody. They also talk a lot about this, just the pressures on them today. That may be something we want to delve into more, but I've been counseling girls for 35, 40 years. And I think one of the things that's changed is how stressed out they are and how much pressure they're feeling.
Where is that pressure coming from? Is it from social media? Is it coming from their parents, from their peers? What is the source of that?
Yes. Also, the educational system. One of the stresses, it's interesting. There's an exercise that we do sometimes, even with the grade school girls, where we'll put a rope down the middle of the room and everybody stands on one side. And then we'll throw out prompts like cross the line cross the line if you have an annoying sibling, cross the line if school is stressful for you, cross the line, blah, blah, blah. And so there's a lot of friendship things, but there's a question we've been asking for a long time. What's interesting is we'll say cross the line if you ever worry about your future. Even girls as young as 4th, 5th grade, almost all of them cross the line. And they already worried about, where am I going to go to college? What am I going to do with my life? I think the educational system, the culture is pushing kids to have this sense of you should know your path by the time you're in 8th grade, 10th grade, 12th grade. Even, when you graduate from college, you should have your whole life all planned out. And I tell girls all the time, that's not how it works for the vast, vast, vast majority of people. But they feel like there's this one path. I need to get good grades, straight A's. I need to go to a top college. I need to get a good job. I need to make a lot of money. That's the line. That's the path that we're kind of shepherding all of them into. And that's not the path that fits for everybody. And they feel a lot of stress and pressure about that.
So for the parents that are listening, what is your advice on how to coach our daughters out of that mindset? What's the language we should be using? What are the habits that we should be building that helps them understand that they don't have to have it all figured out? I mean, I know tons of adults that still don't have it figured out.
Yeah. A couple of things. One of them is there's a good study of middle school girls where they asked the girls, do your parents value character more or achievement more? Then they also asked their parents the same questions. Most of the parents said, oh, of course I value character more, way more than achievement. But when they asked the girls said, my parents value achievement more than character. So I think everybody needs to kind of zoom out a little bit and say, let me look at, see, what am I communicating to my kids with the way I talk to them about school and grades and about club sports and national championships and top colleges. There's a lot of energy in talking about those kinds of things. And so, of course, kids feel the pressure from that. And there's good studies that show that when you value achievement over character, the kids are more stressed, more depression, worse grades. It's not a good thing. So that's one thing is check in with yourselves. What are we valuing mostly in our homes? The other thing I teach girls a lot is I call it my dot theory. And I point out to them, I'll do a drawing with just dots, those connect the dot things that we did when we were kids. And I'd say, well, what's the picture of this? What are the dots showing? And of course, you don't know. And so then you start to connect the dots, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and eventually enough dots connect to then a picture emerges. You go, oh, it's a Christmas tree, or oh, it's a reindeer, or oh, it's a whatever. And so I tell them that to me is how to find your calling. That's a good metaphor. And so your job when you're in 5th grade or 8th grade or 10th grade or junior in college, your job is not to know the final picture, like you're calling your thing. Your job is to be open to dots. And dots are any experience that crosses your path that you feel drawn to for any reason, because it seems like fun, because I don't know, it just seems like the right thing to do. I have an urge to do it. I tell them if you do that, that will lead to another dot and another experience and another thing crosses your path. As you trust your gut, trust your urges, and you just keep accumulating dots, eventually that's what leads you to your calling and that final picture. And so your life will unfold for you without having to force it.
That's beautiful. Okay, I want to dive a little bit deeper on what you mentioned earlier about the achievement piece, because this is so fascinating to me. I wonder if you could give us some clues or signs of language that we might be using that might be unintentionally pushing achievement over character. Like, what are some of the phrases or things that we might be saying, behavior, action, all of that we might not even realize is pushing, prioritizing the achievement over the character?
One of the things I encourage parents to do is to ask their kids questions about why they like things. Like, for instance, when I have girls in my counseling practice, maybe they're a high schooler, and I'll say, what kind of grades do you want? And they'll say, well, A's, like you idiot. Of course I want A's. They don't say you idiot, but I can see it in their face. And then I'll ask them a question. I'll say, why do you want A's? Why is that important to you? And then it gets interesting because some of them will say, because it'll get me into a top college and I want to get a good job and then make a lot of money. They have that whole lineage, that whole path, that they've been conditioned to they've absorbed that. The majority of them look at me and they go, uh, and they don't have an answer because nobody's ever asked them, what do you think about your drawing? Why do you want A's? Do you want to go to college? I ask girls the same thing. What are you going to do after high school? Well, I'm going to go to college. Why do you want to go to college? Pause. And because they haven't been thinking. They're making decisions to please their parents, not disappoint their parents. That's a huge thing to me. Especially I work with girls that worry about disappointing people, pleasing people. So they end up making decisions about all kinds of things based upon that. I cannot tell you how many burned out athletes I've had in my counseling practice. Girls, especially sophomores, juniors in high school, who hate their sport. They don't want to do it, but they keep going because they don't want to disappoint their parents. They don't want to disappoint the coach. Their parents have invested so much money and time and energy into their sport, and they're miserable. They're not doing it for the love of the game. They're doing it to win a championship or to get a scholarship or something about the future, so they're not enjoying the present. And one other quick thing, I don't want to keep talking, but one of the things my wife and I do in talks a lot, we've traveled all over the world giving talks to parent groups. We have them imagine their kids all grown up. We do a visualization. We tell them, close your eyes, imagine your kids now, or your children are 30 years of age, grown-up adults, and imagine them coming to you, and then what are they like? What kind of people do you want them to be? What kind of values, what kind of people, what do they do, all that. And then they open their eyes, then we make a list. This is their begin with the end in mind. Stephen Covey's, one of his 7 habits. And on that list is all these beautiful things like happiness and empathy and kind and close to their parents. And there's all these wonderful qualities that persistent and, have resilience. And after they make this beautiful list, we'll stop and we look at the list and I'll say, I've done this list all over the world and I've never seen on that list straight A's. I've never seen on that list won a national championship when you're a 5th grader. I've never seen top college. I've never seen any of those things on the list. And yet, where does a lot of our parenting energy go in our conversations? It's more about that. That's the achievement thing versus the character things. I think parents can start asking their kids why they like doing certain things, why it fulfills them, what kind of joy they get out of it, so the kids can learn to internalize that. This is why I do gymnastics. This is why I had a girl in my counseling practice yesterday, and she won straight A's. And I said, "Why is that important to you?" And she said, "It's just for me. She said, it's not about my parents." She said, "I like to work hard, and it just gives me a sense of fulfillment." I'm like, "Good for you. That sounds good to me."
So, for the kids that are in sports and they're doing you know, they're going after the scholarships, where is the line for the parent between being supportive and encouraging and challenging versus now the child is receiving it as, I believe you have to achieve in this sport or you're not worthy?
Well, I would want to know why they're doing it, like I mentioned a minute ago. I think that's a really key part. And also, I think a lot of times what kids need is off ramps. So if they do start losing interest, that they know that their parents will be okay with them quitting and doing something else. I mean, I think it's really important in their childhoods to sample all kinds of different things, different sports, different activities, theater, art, different kinds of books. It's so good to sample so you start to learn, like, what do I like and what's important to me and what fulfills me. So I think off ramps would be one key thing so that their kids know that they don't have to keep doing this for their parents. And if they want to do something else, good for you. Try something else.
So, this idea of an off ramp is something that I personally struggle with because I don't like what I do 100% of the 100% of the time. So, how do you help differentiate? How do you help teach a child, hey, you're just having a bad day. That doesn't mean that we're going to quit, right? Like this idea of like teaching grit and resilience versus knowing when to really offer that off ramp and let them go and try something else.
I think there's a difference between I'm frustrated because the coach isn't playing me a lot, or I'm frustrated because I haven't scored in 3 games or whatever, that kind of thing. Because I think those are the kind of things I would listen to them when they would complain and then ask them at the end. I'd say, "I hear what you're saying. You do have a tough coach," or whatever the thing is, and say, "So what will you do?" And then let them go internally and decide how they're going to problem solve. I would encourage them to go talk to the coach, for instance, or it sounds like you might need to practice kicking with your left foot more outside of practice. So I wouldn't let them just quit in mid-season, that kind of thing. It's more like the other part is I'm burned out. And it's easy to get burned out in the travel club sports scene today because they're constantly doing those things. They don't have any weekends off. They're traveling to this and going to that tournament, and they're gone all Saturday and Sunday. There's no downtime to be with their friends and to play and to relax. I think that's what that and coaches who are too intense. Those are the things that make it not fun for kids, and that's the main reason why kids end up quitting their sports. It's not fun anymore.
Okay, so let's zoom out a little bit and just talk a little bit more big picture about what is unique about raising girls. What is it that they need that um, to really become emotionally intelligent? What does that support look like from parents? Or some of your key tips, tricks, advice?
Well, one of the things I hear from girls a lot at camp, at my retreats, in my counseling practice, one of the things I hear a lot is my parents don't understand. They feel like their parents don't really listen. They'll come to them and be upset about a friend thing or something going on, and their parents start to listen, but then they interrupt a lot. This is true for dads a lot. They quickly go to problem solving. Like my friends being mean, they're not talking to me as much. They're gaslighting me, blah blah. And so instead of just listening and saying that sounds tough, wow, that's hard to deal with that, isn't it? What their dads will say is, well, why don't you just ditch them? There's lots of girls in your class. Why don't you just move on? And so then the girls are like, you're not listening. So one of the things I think would be to help girls with the things that they're experiencing, whether it's just life things, pressure things, stress things, is to be a good listener. Don't judge, listen, don't interrupt. If you can ask them, is this one of those times where you just want me to listen, or is this one of those times where you want me to give you a suggestion? I'll do either one. I'm okay with just listening. So that's a huge gift for girls to have that. I would, I'd be very careful about their schedules. That's one of the things that we with that end in mind kind of thing is like Ann and I, my wife and I, we used to have family meetings every week. And at one of our family meetings when our kids were pretty young, we decided as a family that we all valued having downtime. And so one of the things that we all came up with, this was not a rule that mom and dad passed down. It was an agreement that all the kids said worked for them was one sport a season. So they weren't going to be finishing up summer baseball and then play fall baseball and also play hockey because that gets to be nutty. And they wanted downtime. And so we used our coming together and talking as a family about our values, what's important to us. We use those things to guide our decisions about activities. Because if you don't use that, if what you're using is, well, everybody else is playing two sports and everybody else is on this club team, everybody else is going to professional coaches. If you use that as your guidepost, it's a slippery slope. And all of a sudden, there's no time at home. There's no time to have a family dinner because they're all running everywhere. So I get clear about their schedules. You can support them in not being overly busy, because that's one of the things that I see that stresses girls out a lot.
What are the most important things that parents should be doing to really help foster their self-confidence and their ability to speak up for themselves, stand up for themselves, be assertive?
A couple things. One of them is to model it at home, allow them to set boundaries at home. I saw a girl recently who's uncomfortable. This girl is 15, and she's become uncomfortable with her dad, like hugging her. She's going through that stage, which a lot of girls do in the teen years. That their bodies are changing. Just they have a discomfort with their bodies, and so she asked her dad not to. And then he said, "You're my daughter. I'll do whatever I want," and blah blah blah. And he didn't listen. And so I think she was trying to set a boundary. She wasn't saying, "I hate you. You're never going to ever hug me for the rest of my life." She was just saying, "For right now, I just feel a little uncomfortable." And I would want him to say, "I'm glad you told me. I'm glad you're taking care of yourself." Because if a boy does that, in the hallway of school or on a date, I would want you to say the exact same thing. And you deserve to have that person respond to your boundary. So I'd make sure that that's one thing.
What about handling stress and anxiety for
Oh,
girls and just dealing with peer pressure that they're facing?
yeah.
We
That's
talked a little bit about the beginning. What should we be doing as parents to help our daughters handle this uptick in stress, pressure, anxiety that they're
what they need to learn how to cultivate quiet alone time. Because I think in our culture, we've done a great job of teaching kids to be busy and distracted with all their homework and all their activities and all their devices and things, but we haven't taught them how to be alone and quiet. Because what girls need a lot is quiet alone time to check in with themselves. I see a lot of girls who come to me in my counseling practice and they've been diagnosed with anxiety disorder or depression or different things. And many of them, not all, but many of them that I work with, I don't think deserve a diagnosis like that. What I find for a lot of girls is that life is happening to them. Their best friend ditched them, or they broke up with their boyfriend, or a teacher was disrespectful, or they got a bad grade in a test, or they didn't make the team. Just life, normal kinds of things, which evokes emotion. And what happens is they don't want to feel that or think about it because, I don't know, they're not used to it. It's just uncomfortable. So what they do instead is they pick up their phone, and they start scrolling, and they distract themselves from it, and it works. They don't have to think about it. They don't have to feel it, but it doesn't go away. It builds and it builds and it builds until all of a sudden there's a big pile, and then they get on that overwhelmed place. And then when they're on overwhelmed place, it starts leaking out all those things. It leaks out as a hard time falling asleep. And if they can't get a good night's sleep, everything is worse. It ends up leaking out as stomach aches or headaches. It leaks out as anxiety. It leaks out as losing their motivation, feeling kind of blah or a little bit depressed. It leaks out as anger at their family, at their parents, at themselves, more negative self-talk. So there's all these costs that happen to them, and what they need is to have regular quiet time to express and release and to make sense of what's going on. You can't do that if you're watching a YouTube video.
What do you do if your daughter is not used to that quiet time and teenage girls, they've lived their entire life without having much downtime, quiet time? How do you work that in? How do you teach that practice when, it could be really awkward and uncomfortable to
Yeah.
sit by yourself when you've spent your entire life with other people?
One of the things that happens at our summer camps is when they check in is that the people checking them in will say, "Where's your phone?" Or "Where's your watch?" Or "Where's your communication device?" And they're like, "I don't know. I need my phone. There's an alarm clock." They have all these reasons why they have to have their phone. We say, "Give it to your dad. Give it to your mom." We have no phones, no electronics at camp, and they're reluctant. But I can tell you that at the end of a week of having no electronics, what they always say to us is, "It was incredible. I feel so much less stressed." They were able to actually have conversations on the picnic tables at lunch because people weren't looking at their phone. When we're walking into the lake, they're talking to each other. They connect so much more deeply and they feel much more grounded and much more calm. And so what we say at the end of the week is, remember this, you need breaks from your things, your devices and things in order to do what you did this week, to kind of ground yourself and to come back to yourself and understand things about yourself and to express things. You need that time. And so you've experienced it. So maybe that will be your impetus to do it in your quote unquote regular life. The earlier you start with teaching girls about mindfulness and quiet time, the easier it is. And I think, we're giving kids devices way too early. They're not ready for phones and social media until they're in high school, I think, at least high school, with a good track record of a lot of things. So I think if they don't have those things and they're left to their own devices, they end up doing what we did as kids, or at least what I did as a kid, which is we handled our boredom. We went outside and we did stuff and we created things and we learned how to handle our boredom. And our kids have a hard time with that because they're constantly being entertained.
What do you think schools are not teaching young girls that they need to be learning?
They need to create some space like we have at our camp. It could just be a circle once a week, twice a month, once a month, where they get a chance to talk to each other and listen to each other and take charge of their learning community. Like what's their intentions for how they want to treat each other? If there's a conflict, you can teach them conflict resolution skills so they can handle it. Because if they don't handle it, they'll look at each other and say, fine, no big deal. They walk away, just kidding, but it's still there. And so that ends up looking like eye rolling at that person, avoiding that person, talking about them behind their back, and then they get mad, and then here we go. So I think just having a space to sort of clear the air, talk to each other, set intentions with each other would be invaluable. And you would prevent so much drama and stuff in that school, which it takes away from their focus, takes away from their education.
What would it take for schools to incorporate that? Feels almost impossible.
We've been fighting that for years. My wife, we have a school program. It's called Strong Girls, Strong World. So we'll go into schools and work with the classrooms of girls. And the toughest thing to do is to get the top person, the principal or the head of school, on board. Because if they do, then the other teachers will go along with it, and then it goes. They have to understand that, like they'll say, okay, we're having the 6th grade class is killing each other. These girls are horrible. Will you come in? Yes, we'd love to. And they'll say, we can give you like 20 minutes, once a month. You don't understand. We need more time than 20 minutes. We need at least an hour each time. And then we need to follow up to keep building skills and to follow and to hold them accountable to what they're agreeing to. So a lot of it is just letting the teachers understand, the principal understand that this stuff is so important. It's just as important as your math and all that. And it enhances their ability to pay attention in school and to be focused, because they're not listening to all that chatter in their heads, and they're not worried about what's going to happen in the hallway when they walk out of the classroom. They're much more focused.
Well, that's important work that you're doing, working school administrator. Let's shift a little bit because I want to talk about family life and what it looks like to lead your family really well. Earlier, you mentioned family meetings. So tell us a little bit more about the rituals that you used in your own family and that you recommend to other parents. What are the rhythms, the rituals, the traditions that parents should really try to incorporate into their family culture so that they've got this healthy, thriving family?
One of the most helpful, valuable ones that Ann and I did we have 3 kids. They're all adults, and all of them have kids. So we have 4 grandkids and 1 on the way. But I think the best thing we did was we did family meetings every week. And we started when the oldest 2 were probably like 7 and 5, and John was only 1. And so he wouldn't come to the meetings when he was 1. But when he was 4 or 5, he started joining in. But we would sit down, we would acknowledge each other. Everybody acknowledged each person in the family. And then we would open it up and say, what do you guys want to talk about? Is there anything we needed to handle as a family? And after the first couple of meetings to kind of teach them how to do a meeting, then after that, the kids ran the meetings. Every week, every meeting, a different kid would be the leader of the meeting. And so we learned how to listen to each other. We learned how to make sure everybody's needs were met, to create win-win agreements. So we handled things like chores and allowance and anything that was happening at the time. We would talk it through as a family. So they learned some invaluable skills about learning how to be in a community, to be in a group, and to listen to each other and value each other's opinions. And John, the youngest, his opinion was just as valuable as the oldest one's. We planned fun things, we planned vacations, but that kept us on track. It kept us on track as a family. Like we had that as one of our rituals, our anchors, because every week we knew we were going to sit down together, and if something needed to be handled, it would be handled. And then once we had agreements, which they always had their stamp on, their input was important, then it was much easier for Ann and I to hold them accountable. There was no more rehashing, reminding, nagging. We just followed through because we took the time up front to make it crystal clear, and they were part of the solution. It wasn't like some rule we're shoving down their throats. So that was one tradition that I think that was really valuable in our family. And also just having downtime, going outside a lot. We lived in a neighborhood when they were growing up where it was like a street, a circle street, and there was a common ground in the middle. So there was plenty of spaces for them to run around with their friends. And so we weren't rushing around all the time in the car to activities. We just, we made sure as a family that we had enough time to be at home. And the other thing, this isn't really a ritual, but parents ask me all the time, what if you could just mention or give me one thing that parents should do to make sure that they're being really good parents and all that. I tell them, do your personal growth. Because sometimes what gets in the way of us being effective parents isn't that we don't know what to do. Sometimes it may be some of that. It's because there's some old issue that's creeping up. When we have kids, there's a lot of old stories that we've shoved down deep that come bubbling up. Let me give you a quick example. I grew up in a big family. I had 2 older brothers, then 5 younger sisters. And so my 2
Wow.
older brothers bullied me a lot. And so it was real bullying. It wasn't like just someone saying you're ugly. It was like they used to beat the crap out of me. But anyway, that's my sad story. But then I had 2 boys and they were 4 years apart. So sometimes the older one would be a little rough with his younger brother. And so I had handled my issue so that I didn't bring it into their issue. So it would have been really easy for me to hammer the older, my older son TJ, and overreact to what wasn't what I went through. They weren't doing what I went through. It was different. So I think anything we can do to clear out any old unresolved feelings, issues, things that we happened as kids. Otherwise, sometimes they will creep up and interfere with our parenting.
So let's go back to the family meetings because this idea is fascinating because at Empowered Journey, we teach family meetings, but we teach it for the couple. We say this is your leadership team meeting for your family.
Mhm.
And you, as the leaders of the family, need to align on vision, priorities, values, all of those things. And so that's their time to really meet together as a couple to lead their family well. But we have a lot of parents in our program that have started doing a separate meeting with their kids. And so this idea of family meeting with kids is something that keeps bubbling up. It's really fascinating to our clients. It's fascinating to me because our kids are at the age where I feel like they could also start participating in a family meeting. And so tell me about when would you guys do these meetings? Would they be on the weekends or would they be weekday nights? And then when you say the kids would lead the meeting, can you tell me a little bit more about that and what that means exactly?
But we did them usually on Sunday evenings, not because that's the best time, because it was the best time for us. There wasn't
Mm,
anything going on. But every family can decide what's the time when all of us can be there. And the leader in the meetings would start off by saying, okay, let's get started. And they would say, okay, let's do acknowledgements. And then we would all acknowledge each other. And then they would say, what do we need to talk about as a family? And they would just kind of lead the meeting, lead the discussion, if you will. Sometimes they would write down things on a little note on the refrigerator, like this is something I need to handle. Just because maybe there wasn't time on a Wednesday evening. But we knew it. They also knew that I can put this off until Sunday because I know then we'll be sitting down. And we didn't sit down for 3 hours. We sat down when they were young for like 20 minutes, 30 minutes. It got longer as they got older because there was more things to talk about. And I don't know, they could sit for longer. And then at the end, we always did something fun together as a family that the leader would pick. And our kids looking back, and our kids are 42, 40, and 36, look back really fondly of those meetings. They remember them. And I used to keep a little like journal, just writing down the funny things that people said, the issues we were talking about. And I pulled it out a couple Christmases ago, and we went through, and it was a blast because so many memories came up about the things that we were dealing with as a family way back when. But I think the part about allowing them to lead is empowering. And also, they're choosing to come to the meeting; they're not being forced. We'd always tell them, if you don't want to come, that's up to you. We won't make you come. But if we discuss chores, whatever we decide, then you'll have to live with. So you might want to be there to have your input. It's up to you. But they loved the family meetings. It wasn't a hardship. They loved it. They loved getting together. They
yeah.
loved being acknowledged. They loved being in charge. We talked about things that were important to them, and we listened. That was the important. We listened. We empowered them. Mom and Dad had the final say. So if they said we want something that was too far out, we'd say, I'm not willing to do that. But how about this? So we learned to have sort of a give and take process, if you will. But that was so empowering for them. And I think those are skills that all kids, teens, adults need is to learn how to resolve conflicts peacefully, learning how to get in other people's shoes, see things from their point of view. All those things are invaluable skills.
What was the acknowledgement piece? Was it simply just going around and saying everyone's name, or was there more to it?
No, it's one thing I love about you, Dad, is one thing I love about you, Mom, is one thing I love about you, sister, brother, whatever is. And then they always say, one thing I love about the dog is when they were young. But so they learned how to give acknowledgments, which is a skill, right? And they learned how to receive. And
Mm,
so when someone said, well, what I love about you or I appreciate you about you is this, then we taught them to say thanks. Like I heard it. Thank you for acknowledging me. And that's not an easy thing to do, especially for girls. They have a hard time sometimes taking in acknowledgments, so they'll get lots of practice. And it set the tone for the meeting. This is not a gripe session. This is not a mom and dad are going to come down on you because you're leaving your stuff out or something. This is like we're coming together as a family to connect and have this little ritual that makes us all feel good, empowered, have a voice in things. So they loved coming to the meetings.
great. Okay, and then tell me more about the fun activity at the end. What are some examples of what they would pick for their fun activity at the end?
Our daughter used to pick a fun dessert often because she has a sweet tooth. I remember we used to play a game a lot called Dr. Tangle, where the five of us would stand in a circle, and then you'd reach and grab somebody's hands across the circle. And then one person would sit out, like the leader usually. They'd have to untangle us. So you have to step over people's arms and all that. Sometimes
Yeah.
we would play a board game. I remember one time, I'll never forget this. Our older son is very deep, and this was around the holidays, and so he said, "Everybody, write down all the things that you want for Christmas." And we were sitting around in front of a fireplace. So everybody, wrote all the things they want for Christmas. They said, "Okay, I want you to wad it up in a ball and throw it into the fire because Christmas should be more about giving than receiving." And we were like, "Oh my God!" So all kinds of interesting things came up at the family meetings, but it was just something fun that they thought would be fun to do. It didn't have to be some 3-hour thing. It could just be a couple of times we went outside and took a walk around the block with the dog. Went out stargazing. Something just short and sweet that just kind of ended the meeting.
So I imagine that your children, correct me if I'm wrong, have a pretty good relationship now as adults.
With them, with each other, or with us?
Each other, yeah, with each other.
Yes, they do. They're very close, which is really awesome to watch.
Yeah, and that I feel like that's so many parents' dream, right? Like they want to cultivate this amazing sibling relationship. So, what would you recommend parents do when the children are young to help lay the foundation for a really strong, healthy sibling dynamic?
Well, one thing is to teach them how to resolve conflicts peacefully themselves. What tends
Mm.
to happen a lot in most families, and I have a really fun role play we do with parents in our talks. We'll have people role play being siblings and fighting. We show them, the not great way and then an effective way. So what we tend to do is the kids will be fighting. We'll come in and say, "Who started this?" And we take sides. Stop. You should not be taking your little brother's stuff. We yell at them, and then we solve the problem for them, and then we send them off. And what they learn then is it's not my job or responsibility to solve my own fights. I need an adult to
Mm.
do it. And if you ask any teacher in this country, one of the things that pains them the most about teaching is that kids tattle a lot. They don't know how to solve their own fights. So instead, instead of being the judge, juror, executioner of this conflict, your job shifts into, my intention is just to teach you how to do it yourself. Not my job to fix all your problems. It's your job to take care of your relationship. But you don't know that skill, so I will come in for a while and teach you. So if they're fighting over a toy, we would kneel down and say, talk to each other. Well, talk to him. Tell her how you feel and tell her what you want. And then you tell him how you feel and what you want. And then now that you both have that information, now how can you solve it so you both walk away saying, works for me? So we taught them the skills. We guided it for a while until they got it. It doesn't take long. We teach those skills at our weekend retreats, our summer camps, and they pick it up pretty quick. But then if they're calling, "Mom," we're like, take care of it. If you really need me, come find me. And I tell kids all the time, I tell them, if you've tried everything you can peacefully to handle this with your brother or sister, and they just won't do it, then you can come find me and say, I need some support. As opposed to, my sister's always it's not tattling when you just say, I need some support. So I'll go in there as a non-biased mediator to try and support you in working this out. And that's one big thing I think that would help siblings to stay closer, is that there's not a lot of unfinished business, if you will. And I also think just having a lot of down family time together. We had a lot of really fun memories of just simple things. It wasn't like Disney World every weekend. It was just simple things like playing in the backyard or taking walks, stargazing, having their friends over to do stuff. I think having those opportunities just to be together is allowed them to really enjoy being with each other. And they're all different, and they're all parents now. So now they're really connecting through they all have little kids, so they're connecting through that.
That's beautiful. Anything else for sibling dynamics?
Listen. So if one of them comes to you and says, and they're upset about something, it's easy to kind of brush it off and say, "Well, just take care of it," or "That's not true. You're always the one who starts those things." I would listen, and I would try and get in their shoes and see it from their point of view. Even if you don't agree with what they're saying, I would just say, "I hear what you're saying," and mirror them. I teach parents mirroring. So it sounds like what you're saying is A, B, and C. Is that right? Okay. Well, tell me more about that. And you let them unload until they've told you how they feel about that. And then you go into, so what can you do about that? I don't know, what have you tried? What have you tried that in the past that worked, or what could you try? But listening is a huge piece. I hear that so often from kids that their parents just don't listen. So they stop coming. And that's the last thing that parents want, is to not be an influence.
Where's the line between being a great listener and sending them back to go work through the issue themselves?
Well, you can brainstorm with them. You could even role play with them. I've had lots and lots of kids over the years who were having a problem with a teacher or a coach, or it could be a kid. So, I'll listen until I feel like, okay, you hear, you understand. That in and of itself feels so nice to have someone really understand what I'm going through, or can see it the way I see it. And they can say, "What could you try?" And they may say, "Well, I tried to tell her, well, you know what? Let's do a role play. I'll be your friend, you be you, and show me what you said to them." And a lot of times the way they did it was ineffective because they were wimpy, or because they weren't clear enough, or they weren't firm enough, or something. So then we'll practice. I'll say, look them in the eye, and use this, don't use a whiny voice. Use like a more firm voice. Look them in the eye, use a firm voice, and maybe get really clear ahead of time what it is that you really want. So you role play, practice. They just need practice.
Okay. Any other, what are some of your favorite tips for parents that we haven't talked about yet?
One of the things I hear a lot from girls is they share more with their moms than their dads. I'll say, well, why don't you share more with your dad? And they'll say, well, he wouldn't understand. He wasn't a girl. He didn't grow up as a girl. I'll say, okay, it's true. He didn't grow up as a girl. I said, but I think you may be surprised. And I think the reason that they don't feel like their dads would understand is because their dads don't share enough stories when they were growing up. Also, I think this is true for every parent. I think our kids look at us as like the finished product. We might be in a good marriage. We might have a good job. We have some level of success. We have it in their eyes together. They didn't see us when we were 13. They didn't see us when we had problems with friends. They didn't see us when we had acne. They didn't see us when we had braces. They didn't see us stumbling around, when we were kids. So they don't know that unless we tell them. You listen to their story. You tell them, "I'm so glad you told me. And can I tell you a story about something I experienced? I remember one time when I was 12." And then you tell your story. It's similar, maybe similar, but different than theirs, but a similar feeling that you may have felt that they felt. And I think what that does for the girls I work with is they say, well, maybe my dad can understand. He can relate. And that opens up, hopefully another parent that they can come to.
Great. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. So if listeners are curious, they want to learn more about you, your work, the camp that you're leading, where can they learn more?
I guess the best place, just go to our website at like Dr. drtimjordan.com. And I've written 7 books. I have a podcast that comes out every week. It's called Raising Daughters. The stuff about our camps, our retreats, all those things that we do are on the website. So that's probably the best place to go.
I appreciate you spending so much time with us today. And thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. And thank you for the work that you're doing.
Hey, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to Empowered Living. I hope today's conversation sparked some inspiration and gave you tools to live more intentionally in your family, work, and life. If you enjoyed our episode today, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an inspiring story or actionable takeaway. And if you know someone who would love this episode, share it with them, because living an intentional life is better when we do it together. Until next time, remember, the life you want doesn't happen by chance. It happens by choice. Let's keep creating it one step at a time.